I'm joined now by Elliott Morris, author of the Strength in Numbers newsletter. Elliott, I was reading your newsletter and something really caught my eye as we head toward 2026 as it relates to the House, which has been a major focus of politics over these last couple of weeks and months. Can you explain what the analysis that you just went over just showed?
Yeah, that's right, Brian. And thanks for having me back to give you some of these numbers. Look, I saw an article from NPR yesterday. It said that there are 27 total retirements for the House of Representatives at this point. And in this case, retirement means a member says they either don't want to continue in elections, they're quitting overall, or they're running for a different office, say governor or Senate in their state. At this point, 27, that's a lot. And it's a number to focus on because it signals that there's some dissatisfaction among representatives. And it can also signal that some members of one party feel like they might lose their seats or that this might be a bad midterm for them. Historically, when there are more retirements from one party than another, say the Republican Party this year, since they're the ones in power, than the Democrats, that tends to forecast that that party does poorly in the next midterm election. So that's why these numbers are worth tracking over time.
And right now we're seeing 17 Republicans compared to 10 Democrats. And so kind of using this analysis, that would suggest that Republicans, almost to a 2-to-1 ratio, are looking to head to the exits as opposed to their Democratic counterparts.
Yeah, so there are 6 or 7, it kind of depends on how you count it, more Republicans retiring than Democrats. So for some historical comparison, I time traveled. I looked at the previous retirements, or at this point in the 2018 election cycle. That's the cycle you'll remember Democrats' big wave. They won by 8 in the popular vote in November. At this point in 2018 cycle, so 2017 September, there were 18 Republican retirements and 9 Democratic retirements. So a difference of 9 there. This time there's that difference of 6 or 7. So it looks like there's some slight lagging in this indicator. If you're going to use this indicator to forecast what's going to happen in the next election, there's a bit of a lag. Democrats are a little bit behind where they were at this point in 2018 by this metric, but it's still directionally similar. This is still a large advantage historically for the Democrats going into the midterm. Speaks to probably some dissatisfaction with Republicans and some poor projections on how they're going to do next year.
So staying with this comparison to 2018, I know that we've spoken in the past about the similarities that we're seeing in the special election overperformances at the hands of Democrats and how similar they are to the special elections that we saw in 2017 ahead of the 2018 midterm cycle, for example. So can you give us a little bit of an overview of what we're looking at in terms of the overperformance by the percentage in these special elections?
Yeah, great question. So at this point in 2018, again, time traveling, Democrats were doing 11 percentage points better in special elections to state legislative chambers and to the U.S. House of Representatives. 11 points better than Hillary Clinton had done. Wow, time traveling in 2016 seems like forever ago. So 11 percentage points better. They ended up doing again, an 8-point margin in the House, and that was a shift of double digits as well. So again, these numbers are pretty close. At this point in the 2026 election cycle, Democrats are doing 16 percentage points better than they did than Kamala Harris did in 2024. So an even larger shift in the special election index. Now, I wouldn't say this is particularly bullish for them, at least like in comparison to 2018. I wouldn't say they're going to swing the House by 15 or 16 points. Just based on this number, that might be possible. But actually, I think what's going on here is that the types of people that vote in special elections, who are really intensely interested in politics, they're very high income and very high educated relative to the rest of the population. Those people just tend to be much more Democratic now than they used to be. So when the midterm rolls around and you have more less engaged voters voting, they tend to be a little bit more Republican. So you probably shouldn't expect a 16-point swing next year, but it could be double digits. I would not necessarily bet against that.
In terms of going back to the retirements that we're seeing thus far, can you give a little oversight into who the Democrats who are opting to retire might be, and whether there is, actually some good, like if the thesis that we're going off of here is that retirements are generally a net negative because they show that those people don't like they're seeing that their prospects at winning their elections might not be that good, or that or they're figuring, okay, we might be in the minority anyway, and so I don't want to sign up for that, and so I'd rather just head for the exits. Is there anything positive to look at in terms of the Democrats who have opted to step aside?
Well, two prominent examples come to mind. First is Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey. She might think, putting myself in her shoes, that she's well suited to run in a year that will be favorable to Democrats in a state that was not so favorable to Democrats in 2022 or
Yeah.
2024. So she might just seem like, she wants to get out of the House. It's very hard to be in the minority in the House of Representatives. You really can't do much. She can do a lot more as governor of New Jersey. So that's one example. Another pattern here is a lot of the people that are leaving are older. So Jerry Nadler, who's of course very progressive, very important on the left. He's on MSNBC all the time. He's 78 and he's retiring this year. And he just said point blank when he was announcing his retirement, it's time for more for a new generation of leadership in the Democratic caucus, more young people getting into these seats. So he might feel like this is a good opportunity for him to hand that seat. It's a safe Democratic seat over to someone younger who can continue to serve. He also said in his announcement he saw how people reacted to Joe Biden as he aged in that seat, and he just sort of felt that it was his time to move on. So
I
there
believe
are some.
another lawmaker, Jan Schakowsky, in the Chicago area, is in the same boat, where I believe she's either a septuagenarian or octogenarian. So it looks like, I guess, going back to what I was saying earlier, it looks like, whereas normally we would say, okay, these people are just running for the exits because things don't seem like they're going in the right direction for one party or another. It seems like a lot of these older folks are leaving, but that doesn't necessarily suggest that they're doing it because they think that election prospects are dim. In large part, it seems like some Democrats are answering the call for generational change that a lot in the party have been demanding.
Yeah, I'll say there are a lot of idiosyncratic reasons someone might leave, and sometimes they are given the opportunity to run for an office. They are sort of told, "Hey, you're like going to be a shoo-in for this seat." Byron Donalds, a Republican from Florida, thinks he's a shoo-in for the governor's race, for example. He said as much, so that's why he's leaving the House on the Republican side. But on balance, when we tend to have more retirements from one side or the other, that tends to forecast a poor showing for that party in the next midterm. But yes, there's a good amount of idiosyncrasy, and yeah, I mean, you cannot be an older Democrat living in the 2022, 2024, and 2026 elections and not feel the pressure from the base to give that seat to someone younger.
Is there anything else that you're tracking as we head toward 2026 that might suggest overperformance by Democrats?
One other thing, we've already talked about the generic ballot on the polls. That's the popular vote margin Democrats might get in the House. Another polling indicator is enthusiasm. And this gets a little bit back to that special elections point, but Democrats are much more enthusiastic about voting. If you ask them to rate themselves on a scale from 1 to 10 and how interested they are in elections right now, they're much more interested in elections than Republicans are. So that number also tends to be correlated with electoral performance in midterms, especially because you really have to be interested in that midterm to go seek out that participation. So that's another thing to keep your eye on that we'll keep tracking.
Well, isn't that kind of a regular recurring theme that we've seen, where so long as Trump isn't on the ballot, Republicans do seem to underperform? And we've seen that in 2018, for example. We saw it in 2022, and now we're seeing it, possibly as we head toward 2026. The polling suggests the same thing. And so isn't this kind of becoming a recurring theme here?
Yeah, there's a long-term trend at this point in American politics where Democrats do better with educated, higher income voters. In 2012, 2008, there were a lot more working class or non-college educated white voters in the Democratic Party, and they've left. And that sort of sorting on education has started to affect Democratic margins on for other racial groups as well, as especially Hispanics. That has been characterized as bad for the party in general elections for president when you have a really high turnout. But this has been actually worse for Republicans in those lower turnout elections, like a midterm, like a special election, or an off-year election, like Virginia or New Jersey governor this year, or the California recall, or New York mayor, etc. If your base is concentrated among people who are lower education, lower income, They might have to work more on election day, have a harder time getting off, or they're just less interested in politics. That's actually harder for your coalition. So, Republicans have mobilized a lot of voters in presidential elections using arguments that I would characterize as sort of social or more, let's
Yeah,
say, culture war-y.
right.
And that helps them in presidential elections when those people turn out. But when it's an off year, where do those people go? Well, they stay home. So that's been bad for the party.
And to what extent, and I know this is kind of veering into a non-numbers focused question here, but to what extent do you think that the Republicans' efforts to redraw these maps in Texas, Missouri, Indiana, Florida, and even try to benefit from the dismantling of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, where the Constitution mandates the presence of these opportunity districts, these Black majority or Hispanic majority districts, to what extent do you think that might undermine a lot of what the Democrats have going for them as we head toward 2026, whether it's the enthusiasm gap advantage or the overperformance in special elections?
Yeah, so I'll take off my data hat and put on my speculation hat, I guess.
Yeah.
Look, the Republicans that are drawing these maps are very smart. The national directors of the redistricting commissions for all of these states are talking, and it would be silly for me to think that they expect themselves to do well in the next midterm election. So if they are operating in the headspace that they're going to do poorly, and they're also operating in this headspace where the Republican president has told them find more seats, to quote from Trump, then they have both the pressures they need. They have the electoral pressure, and they also have support from their party leader to be as aggressive as they want in those map redraws. So I do expect that it reflects a little bit of their internal discourse about the party's position heading into the next midterm. But the biggest thing that's going on is that the party leader has said, single member districting in the US is not a matter of who voters want for their politicians, but a matter for who politicians want as their voters,
Right.
and they have permission to do that.
Last question here, and this stays with the speculation hat on. But do you think that what the Republicans are looking to do right now with regard to these mid-cycle redraws and, again, the possible dismantling of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, will that be enough to overcome all of what the Democrats have going for them? Enthusiasm gap, the number of retirements for Republicans versus Democrats, and also the overperformance we've seen thus far?
Yeah, so here's the number that people want to look out for. It's D+2, okay? We've done the math here at Strength in Numbers. It looks like Republicans might get 9 seats, maybe optimistically, they might get closer to 11 or 12 out of redistricting. And if things don't go their way, if some of these maps get struck down, then it could be closer to 6. Okay, so let's just say between 6 and 12. If you take between 6 and 12 seats out of the Democratic column, they need to win by 2 points to win the House majority back. So that's accounting for those seats that they're going to lose along the way while you shift all these seats to the left. So right now, as mentioned, they're at D+4. So they would be on track, I would say, to overcoming the bias in the national map from all this redistricting. But 4 is close, so you don't want to say for sure they're going to win. If they stay on this path and the maps go how we think they're going to go, yeah, 4 is going to be enough. 3 is probably enough as well.
Elliott, for folks who want to follow your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. They can go to gelliotmorris.com or just Google Strength in Numbers.
I could not recommend Strength in Numbers enough. I follow it on a daily basis. Every time there is a new article that comes out, I immediately consume it. So highly recommend for everybody who's watching right now. If you are not yet subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Elliott, as always, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.